Welcome to episode 57 of Game of Thrones Abridged on Alt Swift X. We're going to begin with acknowledging some feedback. Because here at Alt Swift X we take customer satisfaction as our number one priority. Our call centers are dedicated to hearing you. No, that sounds sarcastic. Some people have written some really nice comments expressing concern that some of the recent live streaming interaction nonsense has been more of a distraction than a benefit. You know, what with all the zombies jumping around and the sudden tangents about camping advice, and I think that's true. I think the whole sort of schizophrenic jumping around and forgetting to read anything from the books does indeed make things a little more unhinged than they need to be. So we're going to have less of that. This episode, I think, is going to be a bit of a return to basics. Some of that real smooth, original Swifty vintage is what we'll be going for here. Alt Swift X will always be a place for a bit of experimentation, I think. We're always going to be sort of trying to see if some new thing will work, so there will be some bells and whistles, and sometimes they'll whistle a little too loud or they'll ring a bit too much, but we'll adjust the volume, and the goal is to eventually, hopefully, make something good at the end of it all. So there's always going to be some fuckery, but yes, perhaps the recent episodes had a bit too much of that nonsense. So today, I'm not going to be paying as much attention to the chat, so I'm sorry if you say some fascinating thing about Chella, son of Jake, and I miss it. But we're going to be focusing today on the text. We're going to get this train back on the tracks. We're going to restore Alt Swift X's flawless reputation for complete adherence to the text, and nothing but the text. So let us begin with Tyrion VII, A Game of Thrones. This is a really fun chapter. So Tyrion, if you recall, in his last chapter, had just escaped the Vale. He had just been wandering down the King's Road one day when Catelyn Stark abducted him, accused him of a murder of which he was innocent, dragged him off to the Vale where crazy Lysa Arryn accused him of another murder which he also didn't commit, got put on trial, managed to talk his way out of it, got Bronn to fight for him, got sent along the high road, had these bloody ruffian mountain clansmen get up all on his grill, managed to talk his way out of that, and after all these dangers and insanities is now walking to face an even more terrifying threat. An even more terrifying threat than an unjust kangaroo court and an angry mountain Gunthor clan shagger son of Chet. He, Tyrion, is going to face his father. So this is some real fucking Freudian psychoanalytic shit, right? The real horrifying adversary for Tyrion to face is his father, this figure who has loomed large over the whole Lannister brood for so many of their lives. Tywin has been such a huge influence on Cersei and on Jaime and on Tyrion, and the relationship between Tyrion and Tywin especially is, shall we say, strained. Not to mention that it ends, with murder at the end of a crossbow bolt. Even before then, that relationship was strained. Hello, Kata. Hello, Knitted Kraken. So this is what's happening. So Tyrion has managed to escape the threat of the mountain clansmen by promising them, don't kill me, keep me alive, and in return I will get you weaponry. I'll get you Lannister gold is going to raid from on high. I'm going to give, because all the clansmen, they're like these shitty barbarians who don't have much resources, they don't have good weapons. What they want is good weapons and armor and stuff. So Tyrion's like, I promise that with my Lannister gold, if you keep me alive and take me to safety, I'll give you all weapons, I'll give you an axe, and I'll give you an axe. He's like Oprah, just like, and under your seats, I've got a special surprise. It's a crossbow for Gunther, son of Gorm. Like, he's just tossing out weaponry left, right, and center. It's amazing. So it's just giveaways, it's just handouts. That is what Tyrion has promised to the mountain clansmen. So now he must make good on his promise. And so He's come down to Tywin Lannister's war camp. Tywin's got an army in the Riverlands where he's been attacking the Riverlanders in retribution for Catelyn Stark's abduction of Tyrion, the dwarf napping, the infamous dwarf napping, which has started all of these conflicts in the first place. And so Tyrion is sort of standing on a hill and he's like, yo, what do you see with your elf eyes, Chella, son of Chake? He's sort of standing at like a hill over in front of the Lannister camp, and Chella, by the way, is an odd name, isn't it? Chella. It sounds like Chell, the portal lady, which is also a very odd name. Chell. It's hard to pronounce. Don't know what it means. But Chella is one of them. And so the mountain clansmen are coming down the mountain when they come, and they're coming to Tywin Lannister. And Tyrion surveys his ragged band of brigands. So all the different mountain clansmen are divided into these, spoiler, clans. So there's like Stone Crows and Moon Brothers and Black Ears and Burnt Men. There's also Milk someone. Isn't there a Milk someone? They're not mentioned here. There's also some milk folks of some kind. Don't remember what they're called, but there's a whole bunch of different clans. And Gunther, son of Gorn, back in the Vale Mountains, is also raising other clans. So Tyrion is hoping to raise an army out of these clansmen. And we get a description of like all the skins and bits of stolen steel that these guys are wearing. It's like some post-apocalyptic shit. It's like Mad Max. It's like these like comedically, ridiculously improvised pieces of armor and weaponry. So these are a really fucking ragged bunch of blokes that Tyrion has assembled. Well, blokes and women, because there's Chella, son of Chake of the Black Ears, with her vast collection of ears. And we will learn more about some of the actually quite fascinating social structures going on within the mountain clansmen. There's actually a bit of democracy and feminism and all sorts of interesting things going on, which didn't appear at all in the show. Page 2. And so Tyrion has an interesting relationship with these clansmen, though, because on the one hand, Tyrion is like leading them. He's taking them to the Lannisters, and he's sort of in a position of power by virtue of being a Lannister. But on the other hand, the only reason why Tyrion's alive is because the clansmen have spared him on the promise that he will get them weaponry and stuff. So on the one hand, Tyrion is kind of a hostage of the clansmen who promised to, feed his manhood to the goats unless he delivers them all of the weaponry that he promised. So he's sort of in an ambiguous situation, but Tyrion, as we've seen, is very good at talking his way around those sorts of social roles and situations and strategic balances of power. Tyrion is adept, despite his stumpy little legs, at stepping about those kinds of difficult surrounds. And thank you for the donation from Digital Hero, even if I choose not to read his comment this time. And so there's all these different clansmen, and the clansmen are chatting with Tyrion, and Tyrion's saying, you know what, how about this? Look, we need to go meet my father in the Lannister camp, but I think I better go down there alone. I think I better not bring my post-apocalyptic ragtag bunch of Hecker's minions down the road to meet the bloody, the Tywin Lannister, the aristocratic, very serious war man. Brr. It's probably not wise to bring a bunch of crazy clansmen in there. But the clansmen are like, well, if you go in there alone, how do we know you're going to come back? We need to keep an eye on you to make sure you keep your promise. We're not letting our little dwarf man slip between our clansmen mountainous fingers. And so Shagger, son of Dolph, who is fearsome, he calls Tyrion the boy man and threatens once again to chop off his manhood and feed it to the goats if he does not keep his word as a Lannister. The boy man. There are so many nicknames with Tyrion. It seems as though a character can't look at Tyrion without coming up with some kind of usually unflattering name for the dwarf. People have called him like the monkey, devil, and the imp. The imp is the most popular one. All these different sort of dehumanizing, mocking names that Tyrion has to suffer. Tyrion does go on and on about wearing that shit like his shield, but again, it doesn't serve him very well in his trial, does it? And so all these different clansmen, and so Tyrion's like, all right, fine, we'll make a compromise. We're not going to bring the whole club, the whole squad of all of the Hecker's clansmen down into the camp, but we'll bring like some representatives. We'll bring some leaders of each clan with me as my entourage into the camp, so y'all can keep me honest and we can all respect each other and have a great time. And while we're gone, the rest of the rabble who stay up on the hill outside the camp, please try not to kill each other too much right now, because the clansmen are, as we learn, shall we say, rambunctious. I think rambunctious is a good word. Like if they were toddlers, they're kicking their feet, they're running up and down the shopping aisles, like they're in their terrible twos sort of stage. They hit things, they bite things, and they're armed. They are armed. So the clansmen are not who, you want to leave house sitting your place when you go on holiday. They're not to be trusted with ancient Ming vases. The clansmen should be closely watched when unattended, is all I'm saying. And so they also, Tyrion notes, have a curious social structure. So apparently the clans have this, in Tyrion's words, absurd notion that every man's voice should be heard in a meeting, and even their women are allowed to speak. So the mountain clansmen have a bit of that fucking Demnos Kratos going on. Or not necessarily democracy, but they at least have a bit of an idea of like individual rights where like everyone's allowed to speak, including the women. So it's not even like a patriarchal thing. It seems as though all adults, by the sounds of it, are allowed to have a voice in where things go. And Tyrion notes the result of this is that they argue about everything endlessly. It's a bit like a bloody Entmoot. If you give everyone an opinion, they're going to stand around complaining about the Uruk-hai for like scenes and scenes. Entmoots. This is like a clansman moot, a clansmoot, which yeah, some clans are better than others. But anyway, but it's interesting the whole democracy element in Westeros, because Westeros is of course this, it's about nobility, it's an oligarchy, it's the opposite of democracy, it's aristocracy. But certain sects within Westeros do have democracy. So like the Night's Watch up on the wall, they elect their Lord Commander freely. They hold actual elections, democratic elections, and these mountain clansmen down here have something resembling the idea of everyone having a voice, and it's interesting that it's only in these small pockets that we see these non-aristocratic ideas of democracy and individual rights and stuff, whereas like the mainstream Westerosi society in King's Landing is the opposite. It's all super caste-based and stuff, class, caste, it's segmented, it's pyramidical, it's hierarchical, it's a ladder. And it's interesting that the more democratic institutions tend to be some of the shitter places. Let's be honest, the Night's Watch is a bit run down. Let's be honest, the Mountain Clansmen are kind of in the boonies. And so it's funny that it's the sort of irrelevant, out-of-nowhere places that have something resembling democracy. Yeah. While we mentioned Lord of the Rings, so it's not technically a tangent. So there was some talk of some future series to do a Swift series of, and a lot of people were enthusiastic about the idea of Lord of the Rings as a series. And I think that will be possible, but like it'd be very long. Very long, and there'd be a lot of talk about hills. So I'll just say the Lord of the Rings idea is probably less likely. The other two ideas that were floated were American Gods and the Dark Tower. which I think both could work really well. And I gather there was a lot more enthusiasm for American gods than for the Dark Tower. So just so you all know, yeah, so there was a poll, and the poll suggested that American gods is probably a lot more popular than Dark Tower. So yeah, there's a decent chance we'll do American gods. But hey, maybe we'll do a Hobbit thing one day. Who knows? Yeah, no, with Tolkien, the hill descriptions are just like George Martin's food descriptions, as you say, Lucy Wallace. He can just go on and on about a hill. You give him the slightest chance and he'll go, oh, and then, 2 million years ago, the elves of Normandoth fought a battle against the blue dwarves under the shadow of Cerebrimbor's glare, which was another hill known for its complex geological structures, and then there was all this grass upon, and then sometimes the hill went over the glade and there's an elven song that reminds me of. Like, that's how Tolkien feels sometimes, the same way George goes on about Greece going down chins. Not to say Lord of the Rings ain't fucking great. It's great, but it's just, sometimes a bit long. Anyway, moving on. We're staying on track. We are adhered to the rails, man. Look at us, on point. And so they head down the hill towards the camp, Tyrion and his posse. And he mentions that the mountain clansmen have these small horses, these garrons, who are these scrawny little ponies who can scramble up rock walls like goats. Which is, by the way, incredibly impressive. Goats. Have you seen video or like GIFs of mountain goats on cliff faces? Because, like, they are no fucking joke, man. Like, they can just stick. Like I'm talking like 90 degree, 180 degree. I'm talking vertical fucking cliff faces with barely any footholds at all. And these goats can just fucking walk up like they've turned on like no clip or something. They can just slide up like gravity just don't apply to them. Yeah, I mean, you know how all those gravitational equations, all that Newtonian physics is all fucked up. Like, they're missing some variables, right? Like, they haven't got the universal theory of everything in physics right. And I think the missing variable is probably something to do with goat physics. Like some of the missing dark matter in the universe, if you look real hard, I reckon you'll find it in goat hooves. It's like fucking Star Trek red matter or something, man. Something seriously freaky is going on with the goats, because when they go up those cliffs, that ain't right. The gravity gods are not paying attention. Like, they shoot the friction. They just have friction multiplication boots. That's probably something. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you could just paint on a surface that just multiplies friction? I suppose that's just called something that is sticky. Congratulations, folks, we've just invented something that is sticky. But if you could have that, that'd be cool. It's like all of those paints in Portal. The paints in Portal 2, where there's one that makes you go fast, the blue one, and there's like an orange one that makes you bounce, or is it the other way around? Imagine if those were real, all those different kinds of paints, and imagine if one of them was friction, and we could derive it from goat hooves. There you go. There's some physics for you. We're all learning. It's like Skyrim horses as well. Horses in Skyrim, how they can just walk up mountains? Amazing. They must be using the same stuff that the goats are. Anyway, so the boys head down the hill. It's like some fucking, like, what's that song by Eazy-E? Boys in the Hood? Whatever that is, that's playing. Basically, like, Tyrion, he's got a boombox over his shoulder. He's got a boombox on each shoulder. Like, he doesn't give a fuck. Like, Tyrion's waddling down with his dwarfy sort of waddle. He's got a boombox on each one, and he's just blazing some easy motherfucking E. He's got his fucking entourage. He's got Shell, a son of Chet, and she's got the Shagger. There's manhoods and goats, and like Bronn. Bronn is fucking swaggering by his side. Like, just picture this scene. This is like an incredible fucking squad that Tyrion is just rolling up to the Lannister army with, right? So you gotta have that soundtrack and that feel as they fucking roll on in, right? So they roll up into the camp. But first there's some shit about the Burned Men. So you know about the Burned Men, right? There's like Timett and Timett, son of Timett. Yes, Timett, son of Timett. So Timett is like this like bloke who got burned real bad as a way to make yourself look manly. he's really impressive because he burned off his own eye. But whatever, like, yeah, Tyrion's walking in with the boombox, and it's amazing. And then there's a fortification. There's like an earthen wall. There's like a fortification, a small one, an outside one, and they're like, who goes there? You know, from above. It's like that Monty Python scene. What is it, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where like the French people are going like, you smell of elderberries and all of that nonsense. We have one of those conversations from up and down the wall. Hello, Oyster. And Tyrion's like, yo, who's in charge? I got my boys. Oh, grant me access. What's the password? The only password I need is 6 fucking mountain clansmen, man. Like, I'm rolling on in whether you like it or not. And the people on the walls are like, shit, well, that's Tyrion Lannister. I've seen the imp before, but they're kind of like they're a bit shit scared, let's be honest. You would be. A raven flies out of the tower, which indicates that they're sending a message. Because remember, it's an interesting dynamic in Westeros that, you know, you can see emails. I know this is a bit hard for you all millennials to understand, anyone who was born after, 1980. People of my generation, people of my vintage, back when, men were men, back, I was born in the 30s, you see, and back when I was a boy, you could see the Wi-Fi in the air, right? Because we hadn't invented any of those invisible signals, those microwaves that go through the air. We hadn't invented those, so you could see the words. Because here's the thing: you could only communicate a message on paper. We hadn't even invented speech yet, right? Back when I was a boy. So the only way to talk was to get your umber or your charcoal and to drag it along some papyrus. And you had to carve your message. I mean, the alternative was stone tablets, of course, but you got to get a physical medium. And the only way to communicate with someone was that you had to write your message on a rock, and you had to throw the rock at your friend's head. That's how we said hello when I was a boy. When I was a boy, you wrote g'day on a rock, and you threw it at your best mate. It did hurt sometimes. My brother was quite severely brain injured by a hello rock, the old hello injury, the hello handicap. That's what we called him. Old. His name was Hammond, so we called him Hello Handicap Hammond because he got a rock to the head, right in the old head. And he never could walk again. But he was a right old cunt, and he later became the Prime Minister of Dunedin. Dunedin is a small town in southern New Zealand. And old Hammond, he still is Prime Minister there. So there you go. The moral of the story is rocks, sticks, and stones might break your bones, but a hello rock is only going to make you the Prime Minister of a small town in New Zealand. That's the moral of the story. I'm glad we've all learned something today. Hello, Rock Hammond. So anyway, sorry about that. I just sort of took a moment going back into some memories, some flashbacks. Sometimes when the moment hits you, you just feel like you're young again. Egg, I dreamed I was old. Except in this case, I dreamed I was young. It's a crazy world. So the boys in the hood are rolling down the hill, and they're heading into the Lannister camp. And we got some sort of background on the burned men and Timett, son of Timett. And we have the Monty Python Holy Grail talk on the walls. And the boys in the hood roll on in, and then we are approached by a small party, including Flemont Brax and a small bunch of Westermen. Flemont Brax, of course. You all remember Flemont Brax, right? Don't you? I mean, who could forget the one and only Flemont Brax? Those of you who have read the books, he's quite often listed as one of the top 10 favorite characters in Game of Thrones. A real tragedy that Flemont Brax was not included in the show, because who could forget such classic Flemont Brax lines as, quote, "Tyrion," he said in astonishment, My lord, we all feared you dead, or these companions of yours. See, fucking Flement Brax, how could you forget? I'll give you a quick inside look. The reason why I don't do a face reveal while Alt Swift X doesn't do a face reveal is because I've actually got a really large face tattoo of Flement Brax across the forehead. It's made it quite difficult to find employment, but you've just got to show your loyalty to where they lie. And Flement Brax, I mean, man, he's a role model to us all. So Flement Brax is a member of House Brax, and he has a ridiculous helmet, as a lot of people in the Game of Thrones book do. His helmet, since their sigil is a unicorn, one of the fruitier of the Game of Thrones Westerosi heraldry, his helmet imitates the unicorn on his heraldry, so his helmet has a spiral horn 2 feet long on it. Which can you imagine how bad that would be in battle? I mean, you're like the military equivalent of a narwhal, right? I mean, you're like, I mean, the narwhal is the least threatening of all of the marine animals as well. Like, you got Gregor Clegane running around there like a fucking killer whale. You've got Arya Stark moving like a water dancing dolphin, and then you've got fucking Flement Brax moving around like a narwhal. He is completely unthreatening on the battlefield because his long horn. Spoiler: you could just grab the horn in battle. It's 2 feet long. You could just grab onto the end of his helmet and just pull it off, right? You could just wave it around. You could, or you could just like you could hurt his neck if you just hit the horn hard enough. If the helmet didn't come off, you'd probably break his fucking neck. So don't put a giant narwhal horn on the top of your helmet. Is all I'm trying to say. Oh, in the comments, people are suggesting that it's some kind of penis. I emphasize that it is a spiral horn. So I don't know how. I don't know if it's like a piggy tail, like a cork opener kind of a spiral. In which case I'd say less phallic, depending on what your genital mix-up looks like. Or maybe it's just like a curvy spiral, like a something that's just been twisted as opposed to gone fucking roundy. Maybe it's not fucking roundy. It probably doesn't bear thinking. But all that's important here is that Flement Brax is someone to fear. Truly, he's the narwhal that rides. Can that be his new nickname? Flement Brax, the narwhal who rides, the narwhal who swims, something like that. But yes, Flement Brax is one of the most forgettable characters in Game of Thrones. You'll remember him now, though. See, this is like, what's the term for things that help you remember things? Oh, fuck, isn't that ironic? Can someone in the comments tell me what the word is for something that helps you remember things? It's like all good boys deserve fruit. What's the term for one of those? For like all, and for the planets, there's one for the planets as well, which I also can't remember. I can't remember any of the things that help you remember. Mnemonics. Thank you, Firmus. Mnemonic device. Thank you. I forgot the word for mnemonic, which, it's as ironic as a remember-all. Indeed, Scarlett Ovington. So that's ridiculous. But the point is, we'll all now remember the Narwhal Knight, Flement Brax. And so Tyrion rolls in, and Flement Brax tells Tyrion that your father is in command here, Tywin Lannister, and he set up his command. He's set up his base at the inn at the crossroads. And then Tyrion has a little chuckle to himself and thinks, the gods are good, because the inn at the crossroads was, of course, where Tyrion got captured and got dwarf-napped in the first place. Indeed, the night at the end, and indeed the inn at the crossroads is the same place where Sandor and Arya have that fight with some of the Mountains men. So the inn at the crossroads is basically the place where everything happens in this ridiculous series. And so Tyrion has some satisfaction that the place where he was captured has now been occupied by his Lannister father. So Tyrion goes off to see Daddy with his new posse, and they keep on playing Boys in the Hood. And the camp is large, Tywin's camp. There's about 20,000 men here. There's common folk camped out in the open. There are knights with big tents, and there are lords with erected pavilions. Because, of course, the lords, they've got to erect their pavilion. They've got to erect their spirally narwhal horn, or you couldn't see how much of an important man they were, right? And, of course, this is another nod to the whole sort of social structure here. The class system in Westeros is visible. You can see who is the richest and most powerful by the size of their erected pavilion. Erected. Ugh, that's bad for the voice. So lots of erecting pavilions around the place, and Tyrion observes some of the houses who are represented here: the Presters, the Cracoles, the Marbrands, the Liddens. These are all the houses of the Westerlands, who are the bannermen of the Lannisters, Tywin Lannister. And the Mountain Clansmen, meanwhile, are like, fuck, man. Whoa, this is, wow. Because these guys live in the boondocks, right? These guys live up in the hills, where like the most people they've seen in a thing at once was like Uncle Shegger's party down under the hill, where a whole dozen people turned up, and one of them had a hat, like that's the most exciting thing that'll happen in a wake for a Mountain Clansman. But here, you got 20,000 blokes all hanging out, all in these brightly coloured tents, and all these weaponry, of course, are what the Mountain Clansmen are especially paying attention to. So Shagger is awed at the opulence. It's like that, what's that one video where they got like that, who are those tribesmen in Africa in all of those documentaries? The really tall African blokes. There's a particular tribe, it's like the Maasai. Is it called the Maasai? Or something like that? Who are those? Tell me in the chat. Who are those clansmen? Not the clansmen. The tribe in Africa who were like one of the last, like sort of untouched, or one of the like least connected societies to the wider world. No, it's not the Zulu. It's like Maasai or something. Okay, maybe you got, yeah, Maasai. I think it's the Maasai. There was this amazing video where they got some Maasai tribesman. I think he was a Maasai tribesman. Who got taken to like fucking New York or Tokyo or one of those ridiculous 21st century mega cities. Actually, I might be making this up completely, but roll with it anyway. And this guy who comes from a place where like the tallest building is like less tall than the average Maasai. I don't sound like Alex Jones. Shut up. And this Maasai guy, he just walks into like fucking Tokyo, and he looks at like Grand Central Station. We're mixing up our mega cities. Roll with it, guys. And he's like, holy fuck. Like, I've never seen a McDonald's before, let alone a McDonald's on top of a Krispy Kreme, on top of a North Face, under an ad for Kim Kardashian's ass flashing in neon in chrome. Like, damn, I've never seen this many people in one place before. This is overwhelming. This is whoa, this is too much. This is how Shagger Son of Dolph feels in the Lannister camp. That's all. And so, yeah, open astonishment is what the clansmen are saying. And so Tyrion, meanwhile, is going, look good. I'm glad to keep them. I'm glad to see you guys don't think I sound like Alex Jones, because the truth is I look exactly like Alex Jones. That's the real reason why Old Drift X hasn't done a face reveal. I look in a mirror and I see Alex Jones. Pwah, shit. Can you imagine that? If you looked exactly like Alex Jones, and every time you looked in a mirror, you'd had Alex Jones staring back at you? You'd lose your shit. And then Alex Jones would probably sue you for like for copying his image, because no doubt Alex Jones has his name copyrighted. For those who don't know, there are some people asking in the chat. Alex Jones is a very nutty American Yank conspiracy theorist who has a very surprisingly influential show called InfoWars, and he traffics in some crazy theories, like stuff like the Sandy Hook school shooting was an inside job by the government to like take away people's guns or something. Yeah, and Alex Jones he sells these hilarious fucking like supplements to make like your pavilion more erect. So Alex Jones is just like a horrifying, very loud, very angry human being who has some connections to the US government at the moment, actually. I understand he had some like semi-serious advisory role with the current president. Not to get topical or anything. All I'm trying to say is, wouldn't it be hilarious if you looked in a mirror and you saw Alex Jones? That would give you nightmares. You just have to get plastic surgery. And if you had a YouTube channel, you just have to never show your face for fear of freaking out your subscribers. There was actually this guy who looked exactly like Barack Obama, or was it Michael Jordan? Yeah, no, on this podcast, this guy who looked exactly like Michael Jordan was talking about how there was a guy who looked exactly like Michael Jordan who was talking about how his whole, like, he has this whole, like, cottage career based on looking like Michael Jordan and the various sorts of ways you can make money by doing that. So maybe it would be a blessing and a curse to look like Alex Jones. Who knows? Probably more of the latter. Okay, so Shagga is gaping, and Tyrion's like, good, I'm glad the Mountain Clansmen are in awe of the Lannister power, because that gives me more leverage in this negotiation strategic situation. So again, Tyrion always has an eye to the sort of power dynamics of a situation, and Tyrion is very adept at keeping an eye on what's what. And yeah, as Nick says, Alex Jones would no doubt argue that the Great Sept of Baelor being blown up was an inside job, although in this case, admittedly, in Game of Thrones Season 6 it was. Anyway, so yeah, let's not talk about politics, because literally every other content outlet in the world is talking about the fucking president right now. And so Tyrion's like, good, the clansmen are afraid of the Lannisters, that's good for me. And he approaches the inn at the crossroads, or rather what remains of the inn of the crossroads. And so all that's left of that inn is tumbled stones and blackened foundations, because Tywin Lannister has destroyed the inn and killed the innkeep. There is a gibbet. Gibbet is a funny sounding word. Gibbet sounds like something adorable, like a gibbon, like some kind of, funny colored ape, some kind of smiley ape. Gibbet sounds like the name of, like, a Donkey Kong Country a character, some kind of adorable cousin of Diddy Kong who, like, does hip hop dances sometimes and stuff. That's what the word gibbet sounds like, but the horrifying truth is that a gibbet is something awful. Actually, I don't actually strictly know what the definition of a gibbet is, but it's something that you put dead people on. Maybe someone in the comments can clarify what the actual definition of a gibbet is. But the point is that the gibbet is something nasty, because in this case the gibbet has a corpse hung on it. So Masha Heddle is the innkeep of the Inn at the Crossroads, who we met earlier on. And Masha Heddle has been killed by Tywin Lannister and is hanging on this gibbet. And we get this gory description of her stained red teeth in a hideous smile on her corpse, because of course she used to chew sour leaf. Yeah, so we met her in the Catelyn chapter when Tyrion was abducted here. And apparently Tywin has killed this woman for the crime of allowing the abduction to take place in her premises, which is pretty unfair given that it wasn't her fault. She was just doing her job, just doing her business, trying to feed these lordlings. It's not her fault that a bunch of aristocrats walked into her house and started abducting each other. The dwarf napping wasn't her fault, and yet she gets killed for it. So this is one of many examples of a horrific injustice that takes place against the common people at the hands of the nobility, the aristocrats, and their Game of Thrones. And so while the boys in the hood, like, we still got the hip hop playing, while the boys in the hood roll up to the inn, so the Mountain Clansmen, Bronn and Tyrion, the stable boys come out of the stable and they're like, yo, can we mind your horses? Can we take your horses and look after them? Except in this particular case, the boys emerge hesitantly. So of course this is like the system, right? They're like, oh shit, what's the term? What's the word, guys, for like the people who take your cars when you go to the fancy place and you give them your keys and they park your car for you? What's the word? Like the car wranglers, the car herders, the car minders. What's the term for that? For the person whose job it is to take your car and park it somewhere and they steal some valet. That's the term. Thank you. These stable boys are like valets. We've got a comment chain of 16 people saying valet. It's like a valet who, like, takes your car, because that's how they work in these medieval societies, except the cars are horses and the valets are stable boys. Except the Mountain Clansmen, they don't want to give up their horses, right? Oh shit, valet has become a meme. What have we done? And and the stable boys are like, yo, Shagger, son of Dolph, can we take your horse? And he's like, you're gonna scratch it. You're gonna steal the coins out from my glove box. I don't trust you with my car. And Tyrion's like, look, your car's a fucking shitty little, I mean, you know, whatever. Just give him your horse. He'll be fine. He's not gonna scratch your horse. He'll park it safely. Give it a quick shoe shine. Hang one of those little pine trees under the rearview mirror, and the horse will come back smelling like a rose. Wouldn't it be hilarious and adorable? Wouldn't it be hilarious and adorable if you hung one of those little pine tree, nice smelling objects around the neck of a horse, just like a little necklace, just like a little horse necklace with a little pine tree thing on it? That would be great. Anyway, so the stable boys are like, oh, we want to take, BoJack Horseman. That would be a very BoJack Horseman-ian sort of a visual joke, like a visual gag to do, to put a little pine, as Knitted Kraken suggests, to put a little pine dangle necklace around BoJack Horseman's neck. But I'll admit it's a little meta. Moving on. So the horsemen don't want to relinquish their horses, but Tyrion promises them to. And again, we have a repetition of the feeding manhoods to goats joke. And so then he heads inside, and he goes to face his father. And Tywin Lannister is introduced. For the first time, we get to see Tywin Lannister. And Tywin is introduced in Tyrion's mind, along with all of his titles. Tywin Lannister, Warden of the West, Lord of Casterly Rock. So even in Tyrion's head, Tywin's power is very prominent, even in Tyrion's mind. And the very first adjective, the first sort of word that is used to describe Tywin is the word hard. And no, we're not talking about erect pavilions again. The word hard is used to describe Tywin as in that he is as hard as a man of 20. He's in his middle 50s, but Tywin is as hard as a man of 20. Shit, it still sounds like we're talking about erect pavilions, but I promise you we're not. What's communicated with this is the idea that Tywin is. Yeah, alright, we're going to have to turn off the ding for the super chats, aren't we? But again, thank you very much, Digital Hero, for your comment, and I think we'll respond to the super chat messages at the end. I think that's a good way to do it. But thank you for your donation. And so Tywin is described as a hard man with a very erect pavilion. And we have a description of all the muscle up his arms, and we also have a description of his hair. So his hair is golden and yellow, like all the Lannisters are, with their dubious Westerosi genetics. And eventually, at one point, Tywin started to go bald. But since Tywin does not believe in half measures, he shaved it all off, like Bruce Willis. Man, like Tywin Lannister is the Bruce Willis of Westeros, except more of a hard ass. And Tywin's eyes are a pale green flecked with gold. But yeah, he's got his bald head, but he's got his side whiskers. He's got his mega fucking sideburns, man. His golden burns, his sideburns. He's like you know that character in Community. You know Community. You know the character Starburns. There's this amazing character in this amazing show who has these gigantic Greek sideburns. He's played by this actor called Dinos Stamatopoulos, and the guy's sideburns are shaved into the shape of stars. It's amazing. I don't know if they're real or if they're like Velcro, but he's got these incredible Greek black hair. Like, let's be honest. All right, sometimes Westerosi genetics does apply to the real world, because sometimes a whole ethnicity has an incredibly defining feature, like Greek black hair, and sideburns has incredible starburns. But yeah, Tywin has the equivalent of starburns. He has these golden side whiskers, which tragically they didn't include in the show. One of the defining visual features of Tywin Lannister, his glorious golden sideburns. Charles Dance just didn't grow. Maybe Charles Dance isn't able to grow manly sideburns. Tut, tut, tut. Then again, they also didn't include Sir Flemont Brax's narwhal helmet, so it's not the only tragedy that was not included in this chapter. So anyway, Tywin Lannister is a very imposing figure. He is hard and strong and golden, and he has a very erect pavilion, and you should all be impressed. That's basically what we're told in this first chapter. And we also have a mention of Kevan Lannister, who is decidedly less impressive. Kevan is generally described in contrast to his brother, and where Tywin Lannister's pavilion is erect, Kevan Lannister's pavilion is rather flaccid. He's just a guy. He's portly. He's balding. He's got a yellow beard. See, while Tywin's hair is described as golden, Kevan's is described as yellow. And everyone knows that yellow is the slightly shittier version of gold for when you can't afford metallic crayons, right? That's usually the issue. So Kevan is a less impressive man than Tywin. But they are very inconsistent with the Lannister blonde colors in the show, by the way. Like Jaime, especially. Jaime is practically a brunette at this point in the Game of Thrones show. Have you noticed? Like, maybe that's meant to be some kind of subtle symbolism. I suspect that he just doesn't like hair dye or wigs. But in, like, the first season, Jaime was, like, fairly blonde. Like, not very blonde. I mean, he wasn't exactly bleached. But in the show, in, like, season 6 and so, Jaime has basically brown hair, and yet that doesn't even follow along with any kind of arcs, any kind of like de-Lannisterization of Jaime, as might be argued is happening in the books. He just suddenly gets brown hair, and it's like, what? Why? It's kind of dumb and disappointing in the show. Whatever. And so Kevan Lannister, Tywin Lannister, and Tywin greets his son after his trials, getting kidnapped, dwarf-napped, taken to the Vale, after all that Tyrion went through. Tywin's response to his long-lost son returning is saying, "I see that the rumors of your demise were unfounded." So that's Tywin's warm response. And so Tyrion says, "Oh, sorry to disappoint you, father, for not being dead. No need to leap up and embrace me. I wouldn't want you to strain yourself." So Tyrion offers a very sarcastic and passive-aggressive response to his father. And we immediately get a taste of the fucking reservoirs of resentment that lie below the surface, or just on the surface, in the relationship between Tyrion and Tywin. If we're using some kind of liquid analogy, it's not only an underground reservoir of resentment, it's like a lake of resentment on the surface. And not only that, but it's also raining resentment from the skies. We've got one of those old resentment rains. It's a veritable resentment storm. It's a hailstorm. You know when sometimes it hails and rains at the same time? That's what it's doing with resentment. We've got solid, frozen blocks of resentment hailing down from the sky at the same time that liquid drops of resentment are filling it's like a torrent. It's a flood. It's like a biblical flood of resentment is how much resentment is happening here, right? The rains of resentment, indeed. It is just everywhere. It is flowing. It is drowning us all. That is how fucked up the relationship is between Tywin and Tyrion. And yeah, so Tyrion suddenly feels very conscious of his stunted legs. Tywin's gaze makes him feel very aware of his deformities. And Cersei says something almost identical later on. Cersei says something in Feast, I think, about how when Tywin looks at you, you know that he can see all of your terrible flaws and all the ways which you're basically a worthless, terrible person. So both Cersei and Tyrion, despite the differences, have very similar things to say about how Tywin's glaze makes you feel like a piece of shit. And of course, that is kind of Tywin's vibe. So as soon as his son walks in, Tywin starts saying, "Oh, by the way, fuck you for starting this war, Tyrion. That was so inconsiderate of you to go and start this war. You should going and getting kidnapped like that. Getting kidnapped by a woman, no less. Jaime wouldn't have let himself get kidnapped by a woman, which is so dumb. Like, not just because it's sexist, but just because, like, Catelyn had. I mean, it was blokes with swords who kidnapped Tyrion, you know? Huh? It's just fucking dumb to say that Tyrion shouldn't have allowed himself to get kidnapped because It was blokes with swords. He was one bloke. What was he gonna do? What would have you have done in that situation, Tywin? Would you have punched Catelyn in the uterus? Is that how you would have exploited her gender to not get kidnapped? Like, is that, in what way would you have done anything? Tyrion didn't do anything wrong. It's not his fault for getting dwarf napped. He was a dwarf. There were blokes with swords. What are you gonna do? Yes, Brandon Winslow, you're correct. Tywin is not always using logic. Sometimes he's just using cuntery. He's just using pure dickishness. Tywin is not a very good... Yeah, and good point, David Kovalev. Jaime spends a better time of the second book being imprisoned by a woman. And you don't hear Tywin making fun of him for that. So, yeah, Tywin really is a bit of a prick. And as a steamy cup of Josh suggests, everything would be different if Joanna lived. That's a very good point. Joanna Lannister was the wife of Tywin Lannister, the cousin of Tywin Lannister, and the mother of Tyrion and Cersei and Jaime. She died giving birth to Tyrion, which is pretty tragic because apparently Tywin really loved Joanna. And we're told that after Joanna's death, Tywin became a worse person. We're told that the best part of Tywin Lannister died with Joanna. And we're told that, Tywin would smile for Joanna, and Tywin really loved Joanna. And apparently, it's said that Joanna ruled Tywin. Tywin ruled the realm as Hand of the King, but Joanna ruled Tywin. So Joanna was apparently quite a powerful and influential woman, as well as someone who was apparently quite lovely by what little we know of her. Yeah, and of course, as Dylan first says, the death of Joanna during the birth of Tyrion is one of the things that Tywin heaps blame on Tyrion for, which again is also kind of ridiculous because of course it's not Tyrion's fault that Joanna died giving birth to him, but Tywin will blame Tyrion for whatever he can. So again, despite Amy Bennett suggests saying Joanna Lannister 10 times fast. Joanna Lannister, 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 Joanna Lannister. Easy. Try something harder next time. Okay, so Tywin Lannister's a cunt. We've established that. And Tywin talks about how the honor of the house was at stake. So once we've established that Tywin is a hard-ass, we're also told that Tywin cares a lot about Lannister pride. Don't worry, Laura, we're back on the rails. And so we talk about Lannister blood, we talk about all sorts of stuff, and Tywin's like, oh, I heard that your blokes Morik and Jick were killed, so I guess you'll be wanting more men, I guess you'll be wanting more people. And Tyrion just says, oh, you don't need to worry about that, I acquired some men of my own. And so he alludes to his mountain men. And then Tyrion takes a sip of ale. We get a nice little food description. And the ale is apparently quite tasty. And so we've got another donation from the Lawn Gnome King. I know this is an interruption, but I'd like to thank the Lawn Gnome King, not only for his donation, but for the fact that he set up the Discord. He's been running the Discord. He, she, I'm not actually sure. Shouldn't assume gender. My gender-neutral Lawn Gnome King compadre has set up a Discord, and there's going to be a comment in the video if you'd like to go join it. There's a lovely little community. There, which you can join if you wish. So thank you, Lawn Gnome King. And so we said Joanna Lannister a bunch. So Tyrion's sipping some ale, and after sipping the ale, Tyrion thinks, oh, it's a shame that Tywin killed the innkeep, Masha Heddle, because this ale is rather tasty. Which reveals that Tyrion has a pretty, like generous dollop of that old Lannister family fucking sociopathy that some of these guys have. Like, the Lannisters really don't believe, that common people have any fucking value as human beings. Unlike the Mountain Clansmen, who recognize, like, inherent rights of all people to some extent, the Highborn Lannisters believe, or seem to believe, that lowborn people are not really worth very much as humans. You can just kill them with impunity and it's fine, because Tyrion doesn't express any regret or sadness over the death of this innocent Masha Heddle. He only expresses regret that, oh, what a shame, she isn't around to make me tasty beer anymore. So even Tyrion, who's, kind of seen as a good guy, is pretty pretty dismissive of the life of Masha Hedel. Anyway, so we get some discussion of the war. We get some war talk. And so apparently Edmure Tully had spread out all of his men because he was trying to protect all his peasants. And as Catelyn told us in an earlier chapter, that's strategically a bad move because it splits up all the people and disperses their power. So because they were all split up, Edmure trying to be a good guy, trying to protect the people, but ultimately failing, as Edmure continuously does, most of his blokes were wiped out by Tywin. And meanwhile, Jaime has been fighting the Vances and the Pipers at the Golden Tooth, and now he's besieging Riverrun. Riverrun goes under siege, and it pretty much stays under siege for the rest of the goddamn series. And there are the Blackwoods, and the Raven Tree's fallen. Lady Went at Harrenhal has fallen. The Wents get extinguished, I believe. Harrenhal, of course, being a cursed castle. Harrenhal, just for once, to make a Harry Potter analogy, just in case you're wondering if Alt-Shift-X would ever use a Harry Potter analogy, completely unprecedented. But Harrenhal is like the Westerosi equivalent of the Defense Against the Dark Arts position at Hogwarts, because that's a famously cursed position where anyone who becomes the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher tends to meet some kind of untimely demise. And anyone who commands Harrenhal, who takes over Harrenhal, tends to meet an untimely demise. There's like a good 10 characters or houses and characters who have all ruled Harrenhal at various times throughout history. And every one of them have gotten fucked up. Vargo Hoat got fucking mutilated, with all of his bits got pulled off and fed to people. Gregor Clegane had Harrenhal for a bit, and he got fucking zombified and stuff. Lady Went, and yeah, as Firmus suggests in the comments, Littlefinger is now in charge of Harrenhal in the books, which probably does not bode well for Littlefinger, right? You thought Littlefinger was such a bloody know-it-all genius spy man. Well, he didn't take into his calculations the Harrenhal Harry Potter curse. Harrenhal is gonna fuck you up, so Littlefinger's probably gonna die. And as was mentioned in a recent Alt-Shift-X video. Some of you all might have heard about this YouTube channel called Alt-Shift-X. It's pretty good. 7 out of 10. I'm feeling a high 7. Anthony Fantano, the biggest, fastest shift on the web. Alt-Shift-X is this pretty good YouTube channel. Should we do an ad for Alt-Shift-X? It's this exciting new channel that you might have heard about. It's kind of little known. It's kind of niche, kind of cult. So maybe I should tell you all about it just in case you haven't heard of it. But Alt-Shift-X has this video that mentions something that was related to what I was talking about. Alright, I think we've just done a tangent on a tangent on a tangent. Best teeth in the game. Tangent on a tangent. So let's just return to the tracks. Back on the tracks, and this railroad train will keep moving. So we're talking about the war. We're talking about how the war is going. And apparently the Lannisters are doing pretty well. They've pretty much beaten down most of the Riverlands. But there are some holdouts. The Mallisters out on the coast hold Seaguard. And Walder Frey is apparently getting his blokes together. But of course, Tywin points out that Walder Frey won't go into a fight unless he knows he's already going to win. The late Walder Frey, as they call him. So they don't see him as a threat. And in fact, in the future, the Freys are a collaborator with the Lannisters. And so this war, Tywin says, is as good as won. Which is the most fucking hilarious example of spoken too soon, counting your chickens before they're hatched. Or rather, counting your chickens before you've turned them into an omelette, because in this analogy, Tywin is killing the chickens, he's attacking the Riverlands, and he thinks that they're all dead, but the war is not over just yet. The war is in fact just beginning, so Tywin has counted his chickens before he's smashed all the eggs into a tasty Riverlands omelette. Point being that this war is only just beginning. Anyway, so Tywin's like, alright, so what else could be a threat to us? There are the Arryns in the Vale, there are the Starks, and Tyrion's like, I wouldn't worry so much about the Arryns. The Arryns are incredibly defensive and don't want to go attacking anywhere. And also Lysa Arryn's kind of fruity and not very scary. And the Lord of the Vale is a fucking 7-year-old with epilepsy. Not to say with epilepsy that you're less of a person, just that you're probably less threatening as a battle commander. All I'm saying. And so Tyrion's like, all right, Aaron's, don't worry about it. But you know what? The Starks might be a problem. They're angry, they're icy, they're cold, and the Starks, they're protagonists. I don't know if you know this, Tywin, but the Starks, they have POV characters, like fucking 5 of them. Man, the Starks, they're the heroes of this story. And I don't know about you, but when I last checked, Tywin, he's not a protagonist. He hasn't got as much plot armor as those Starks, man. People say George R. R. Martin is brutal, but those Starks have a fair bit of plot armor, you know? And I would suggest that you're gonna need more men if you're gonna puncture that plot armor with your Lannister swords. That's all I'm saying, Tyrion says. And so Tywin's like, nah, you don't need to worry about the Starks. Robb Stark is a child. He might feel all impressive looking at the banners fluttering in the wind, but war comes down to butcher's work, and Robb is not going to have the stomach for a real fight. An interesting parallel that in the show, and not in the books, in the show there's all those scenes, like several of them, including some deleted scenes, where Tywin is shown butchering an animal at the same time that he's chatting about something. Literally butchering, so like cutting it up and skinning it. So in Season 1 we see him skinning a stag, which represents the demise of House Baratheon at the hands of House Lannister. And in a deleted scene of the show, we see Tywin Lannister fishing and gutting a trout, which represents the destruction of House Tully, which is lovely symbolism. Even though, you know, you gotta acknowledge that the image of Tywin Lannister doing what would be seen as like work for common folk is pretty incongruous with the whole sort of Lannister pride, right? Like, these are aristocrats. I don't think Tywin Lannister would really be all that into getting his hands dirty with some actual manual labor. But nonetheless, it is a cool scene in the show, and probably a pretty cool addition. Yeah, and the other thing about that fishing scene, the deleted scene with the fishing, is that Grandmeister Pycelle comes to Tywin, and he does this whole thing where Pycelle reveals that, whoa, I was actually a straight-backed, straight-talking individual all along, and I was just pretending to be a doddery old man, which was interesting. They ended up not including it in the show, and I think rightly, because it seemed, I don't know, a bit silly for Pycelle to, I don't know, dramatically change and do that sort of Clark Kentian, whoa, I'm not Peter Parker, I'm actually a Spider-Man, except in this case Pycelle's hidden superhero power is standing up straight. Insert some awful joke about web slinging and Pycelle's predilections for prostitutes. It's okay to say that, though, because of the opportunity to say Pycelle's predilection for prostitutes. So, Tywin is talking about how Robb is not a threat. And Tyrion asks, what about the king? We do have a king, right? We do have a government. King Robert Baratheon, what he's doing, my fearless monarch. What's he up to? While Ned Stark is being imprisoned. And then Tywin Lannister says, Robert Baratheon is dead. And Tyrion's like, oh, shit. He is, really? Oh, so what? Now Joffrey's in charge. Fucking Joffrey. And Tyrion's like, well, if Joffrey's in charge, that really just means that Cersei is in charge. And Tyrion notes, the realm would be a much different place with Cersei ruling in place of her husband, which is like another of the greatest understatements of all time. Because as we learn in Feast, Cersei Lannister being the government leads to some, to say the least, shenanigans. We gotta say, you know, at least some like level 2 antics are going on. Someone give me some synonyms here. Shenanigans, antics, what are some other good ones? There are some good ones. Some real hijinks. Cersei Lannister gets up to when she's the government. Hijinks, shenanigans, and antics. Those are all things that Cersei gets up to when she is in the government. By the way, another funny parallel is you know, the whole thing about Tywin saying that, yep, well, we've beaten the Riverland. Skullduggery. Good one, Brandon. Skullduggery. Love it. Mischief. Good one. Capers. Fuck. Capers is amazing. Tomfoolery. See, this is amazing. I should really write everything live, right? I should write live so that whenever I have an Alzheimer's moment, because I'm very old. What was the old person voice? You know that I was born in the 20s. We didn't have thesauruses then. The only way that we could write was that we had to broadcast, we had to live stream from our caves in order to get alternative words while we were writing. That was the only way we could do it back in the 1820s when I was a boy. Our thesauruses were on YouTube live. I wish I could write like that. Anyway, so King's dead, and Cersei rules King's Landing, and Tyrion thinks, that might be less than ideal. And Tywin's like, by the way, if you want to be actually useful, because you're only of value to me as a son if you, are useful, go and attack some of these remaining Riverlanders. It'll be great. But Tyrion's like, I've actually got other plans. Tyrion says that, Tyrion alludes that he actually has a plan to use the Mountain Clansmen to go and fucking destroy the Vale, as he sort of promised with the Mountain Clans, which we'll sort of get to later. But Tywin's like, here's all the different things you could do to be useful. You could go and get rid of some of Ned Stark's afterthoughts, including Beric Dondarrion. Alright, Firmus suggests that everyone is only valuable if they are useful. And that's a difficult statement to pass by without me reaching at. I think there's a lot of different ways you can think about value. I admire the pragmatism. Like, it's absolutely... value is value, right? If someone is of no value, someone is of no value. But I think it's impossible not to recognize that there are different kinds. Oh, damn. All right, so Firmus hits up with another statement that it is a liberal pseudo-religious myth of freedom and rights. Now, you got to say, yes, freedom and rights are things that are invented. They are arbitrary. I don't think anyone's arguing that freedom and rights are something inherent to the soul, right? But they are of use. They are, as you might say, useful, valuable. But we might be getting sidetracked. So, Beric Dondarrion and the fat jep of a priest, Thoros of Myr, hey, no, but don't attack each other. It's cool. We're allowed to say things in the chat. So Beric Dondarrion and Thoros of Myr are running around, about to start the Brotherhood Without Banners. And Tywin's like, could you go please deal with the proto Brotherhood Without Banners without making too much of a botch of it? So Tywin's suggesting that it would be like no big deal, easy peasy, just get it done, to get rid of Beric Dondarrion and the Brotherhood Without Banners, which is also kind of funny given that books and books later, they're still struggling to bloody get rid of the Brotherhood Without Banners. So in the same way that Tywin's like, we'll just get this war done, I think this war's pretty much over now, and he's completely wrong, it's just beginning. The same is true of the Battle of the Brotherhood Without Banners, the ongoing guerrilla war committed by them. It's like World War One. At the start of World War One, like the biggest fucking war ever, like all the Germans and all the British were all sitting around and they're like, alright, we got this brief tussle going on in Austro-Hungary. It shouldn't take too long to straighten out. We'll just like march into Belgium or wherever the fuck they were doing. Look, it'll take a few weeks. World War One, just take a few weeks and then it'll be done. We'll all be home for tea and crumpets in just a nonce. It's going to be super easy, super straightforward. And then fucking 4 years later, men are still rotting in the trenches. That's what it's like with the War of the Five Kings. When Tywin's like, I think it's about over. See, Tywin has no idea of like the meta-textuality of Game of Thrones. Tywin has no idea who's a protagonist and who's not. And he also has no idea that he's only like 75% into the first book. If Tywin knew that, he wouldn't be so confident that the war is over. So they're like, alright, whatever. And Tyrion reveals that, but I made some promises to these mountain clansmen. I promised to give them arms and armor. So, could you hand those over, please? And then we have a bit of physical blockwork happening because a man bursts through the door. This is like in those Seinfeld episodes when Kramer bursts in, right? We have a dramatic entrance from none other than Shagger, son of Dolph. So Shagger, son of Dolph. It's hard to describe with words. George Martin does it though. So the captain of the Lannister Guard in the area is sent flying across the room, and the door bursts open, and Shagga, son of Dolph, marches in and snaps the captain of the guard's sword across his knee, and just sort of shouts at him and chastises him. He's not trying to kill him, he just wants to make a dramatic Kramer entrance. He bursts through the door and yells something about chopping off people's manhoods. So we have a dramatic entrance from Shagga, son of Dolph, and then Tyrion, and it's quite funny because Shagga's like, "Oh, I will chop off your manhood and roast it on the fire," and then Tyrion's response to this ridiculous, crazy, dramatic entrance, Tyrion takes a bite of cheese and says, "What? No goats? You're only roasting the manhoods instead of feeding them to goats?" Which, by the way, is a bit of a demonstration of the rule of 3. What's it called? Comedy comes in 3. You know how in 3s? Because we've actually had, this is the 3rd time we've had a manhood being chopped off. So the first time it was chop off your manhood and feed it to the goats. Second time it was chop off your manhood and feed it to the goats. Third time it's chop it off your manhood and roast it on the fire, and then a little jokeroo about goats. All right, you guys understand how trend lines work? You need 3 data. Well, no, you got 1 data point, 1 datum. All you got is a point. It ain't really worth shit. Further experimentation required. You got a second datum, a second data point, right? That's when you start to establish a trend, right? And once you got 2 data points, the audience has an expectation, right? They have some. Look, everyone, take notes. There'll be a test on this later. 2 data points, you got an expectation. So you got 2 manhoods, 2 goat manhoods, manhood, goat. It's like Pavlovian conditioning, right? Pavlovian conditioning. You present the audience with a manhood, you give them a goat. You present them with a manhood, you give them a goat. And so then every time they see a manhood, they expect a goat, right? So you've Pavlovian conditioned the audience, right? And then you say manhood, but then you say roast on the fire instead of a goat, and everyone's mind just blows because you've broken their conditioning. You've broken the trend line. Whoa, shit! What's up? And that's called humor. Humor, when you laugh, right? There was a very famous philosopher who said this once, that laughter is actually a special kind of existential scream, right? When you laugh, you're actually saying, "Oh gods, my hypothetical model of the universe with the trend line, it's wrong. Shit." That's what laughter actually means. It's like my expectations were subverted. The 3rd data point was not in keeping with the trend line, and the only way we can express that to the sky is by going, ha, 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 ha. That's humor, guys. If you ever were confused about humor, that's the whole thing explained right there. Laughter is actually a deep existential scream. That sounds like something that Rick would say. So hey, Old Shrift X, not a bad name anyway. So Shagga enters like Kramer, and so Tyrion's response is to take a bite of cheese. So Tyrion's taken it pretty chilled, but then Tywin is also remarkably chilled with this clansman bursting into his room, and he says, "Who might you be?" he asks, cool as snow. So Tywin also knows how to play it like a motherfucking G. So Tyrion's like, "Oh, well, he's just a mountain clansman, father. He followed me home. Might I keep him? He doesn't eat much." So we got Tyrion doing another sarcastic little funny man. And then Con, one of the mountain clansmen, a bunch of them have walked in. He talks about, he's a free man, and free men by rights sit on all war councils. Sorry about that. What was your name? Commenter. Rights. Con reckons he has them. Grease running down tunes, yes. And so Timett, son of Timett, is also in there. And Timett and Chella and the mountain clansmen, they're not all that impressed by Tywin. They notice that he is old. Timett, for his part, is less than 20 years old, and he seems to figure that anyone who is old, like Tywin and Kevin, are just useless old blokes. So, mustn't be very impressed by me, given my vintage. I can't remember what the old bloke voice sounded like. And so the clansmen introduce themselves, and Chella is there, proud Chella, and Chella says that, "Oh, I'm not a maid, my sons have taken 50 years among them," and Tyrion says, "Ah, may they take 50 more." So Tyrion is all charisma, all charm. And then we get some red-hot bants from Tyrion against Tywin. So Tyrion introduces his new friends, Shagger and Ulf and all of these blokes. He introduces Bronn as a sellsword of no particular allegiance. And then we get to the point which is probably the best writing contribution that the HBO show has made to the Game of Thrones universe, which is when Bronn gets introduced in the show, but not in the books. In the show, we have, Ulf... It's data points again, guys. So we have Con, son of Korath, Shagger, son of Dolph, Ulf, son of Omar, Timett, son of Timett. So we establish the trend line, right? Everyone is character, son of X, X, son of Y, right? It's that Pavlovian conditioning, the 1-2 punch. We're told Bloop, son of Bloop, Bloop, son of Bloop. And then in the show, it comes up to Bronn, and it's Bronn, son of... And then Bronn says, you wouldn't know him. And it's fucking hilarious, right? Because the trend line gets established, and then our expectation gets subverted. Fucking hashtag humor. Nothing will ever be funny to you again once you realize that, by the way. You've just seen the mechanics of how shit works. It's the sausage factory, right? You've been taken into the sausage factory, and you've seen how the humor sausage gets made, right? All it is establishing expectations, then subverting them. That's all it is. Bloop, son of Bloop, indeed. So yeah, Bronn in the show, they have that funny moment. It's not in the books. For once, D&D were wittier than George R. R. Martin. And yeah, so Tyrion observes that Bronn has already changed sides twice in the short time that Tyrion has known him, and he then says, so, you and Tywin, father, you would get along with Bronn, given that he's changed sides that much. So that was like low-key, like a massively, like, fucking sharp, fiery, banty jab right in Tywin's little bant hole, because Tyrion is making fun, mocking Tywin for having changed sides during Robert's rebellion, because of course the Lannisters sort of pretended to be on the side of King Aerys until they betrayed Aerys and went on the side of Robert and his rebellion. So Tyrion compares Tywin to the sellsword Bronn, which is not a comparison that Tywin would be very pleased with. So Tyrion has a real go at Tywin. And then Tywin rises, dignified and correct, as if to rebuke that statement. And Tywin, similarly to his son Tyrion, has a very sort of strategic eye to the sort of power dynamics of a situation. And he says, oh, well, even in the West, we know about how impressive and the prowess of the warrior clans of the mountains. So Tywin just flatters them and kisses their ass, basically, by saying, oh, we know how impressive you guys are, when in reality he probably doesn't give a fuck. So again, he's trying to sort of butter up the clansmen. And Tyrion, before he's interrupted, Tyrion is thinking about, his plan to reduce the Vale of Arryn to a smoking wasteland. Tyrion was planning to use the mountain clansmen to take over the Vale. Not only to take over it, but to reduce it to a smoking wasteland, which is a bit disturbing, again, that Tyrion, this supposedly good guy, is willing to, presumably kill a lot of innocent people in the Vale. But also, it's actually quite similar to something that Cersei thinks. So Cersei, in the books, she sort of internally thinks about, by the way, we should probably, genocide the Islands is probably something we should do. Cersei thinks about reducing the Iron Islands to an island of their skulls. She conjures up quite a strong image of killing all of the Ironborn and making an island of their heaped skulls, is how many Ironborn she wants to kill. And she wants to do that because of the Ironborn's betrayal and their raiding and all of that. So Cersei's into genocide, and Tyrion similarly is pretty blasé about the idea of reducing a region to a smoking wasteland. Something that might also happen in the books, by the way, still. The idea that the mountain clansmen might take over the Vale, or at least attack some of the towns there or something. There is still hope that Timett, son of Timett, might one day rule the Vale, because of course, as a certain Alt-Shift-X video talks about, Alt-Shift-X, you probably haven't heard of it, is this channel that does these Game of Thrones explanations. There's a video about Timett, son of Timett, that talks about this thing. Anyway, so they're interrupted by a messenger coming in that says, yo, the Starks are coming. The Starks are coming. What's the reference there? The Romans are coming. Who are coming? What? There's a reference there. What is it? The somethings are coming. There's a thing there. Anyway, so they're like, the Starks are coming. The Starks are moving down the road, and Tywin Lannister says, "Splendid, great, time for a war. All this talking was boring. I'm gonna go fight some Starks and kill some Northmen. The Redcoats are coming. Is that it? Whatever it is. The Starks are coming down south, and so Kevin is like, well, since I'm the lame, the British are coming. Maybe it was that. Since I'm the less impressive brother, I, Kevin, will suggest that we remain at our defensive position and just chill here." And Tywin is like, well, since I'm the golden-bearded brother, you're just the shitty yellow-bearded brother. Of course you yellow-bellied, yellow-bearded coward. Of course you want to stay at the defensive position, you little noir, you fucking Kevin Lannister. I'm Tywin Lannister, and I'm going to attack the Northmen from the front, because I have no fear. I'm Tywin Lannister, and I have a golden beard. And so Tywin Lannister's like, yo, I'm going to attack the Starks. The sooner I deal with them, the better. And then after that, I'll deal with Stannis Baratheon, who of course, is the other claimant for the throne. Not sure if he's declared that at this point, but he decides to go and march against Robb Stark. But of course, the fact is that the army that's marching down the King's Road towards Tywin is in fact Robb's feint, Robb's like secondary distraction army. Robb's real army is going west to go attack Jaime, and to attack him in what will become the Battle of the Whispering Wood. So Tywin is actually getting played like a pleb at the moment right now by Robb, but he doesn't know that yet. And so Tywin enlists the support of the mountain clansmen. A clever ruse indeed, Colton. A clever ruse indeed. And they decide to get the mountain clansmen on side to join in their battle. Ride with me against my enemies, and you shall have all that my son promised you and more. And then Ulf, son of Omar, who was clearly a sharper tool in the shed than most among the mountain clansmen, goes, hold on. All right, so Tywin, you're suggesting that we fight in your battle in order to get a whole bunch of armaments, as Tyrion promised us. But we already have been promised all of those things in exchange for keeping Tyrion alive and allowing him out of the Vale. So how is it that you're proposing that we fight for you, and in reward giving us something that we are already owed? What the fuck sort of a deal is that? But then Tywin and Tyrion, those of the golden tongues, those Lannisters with the golden tongues, they say, "Oh, well, what? Are you scared, Potter?" That's basically what they say. The mountain clansmen are like, "Why should we fight for you?" And then Tywin is like, "Are you scared, Potter? You want to run home to your fucking little mountains because you're scared of some Northmen? I think the Northmen are a bit too scary for you. They're a bit frosty. They're a bit angry. You wouldn't want to fight the Starks, would you? Because you're scared, Potter." And so then immediately the clansmen get played by the Lannisters, and they're like, "I will fight for you because we are not scared of anything. We will chop off their manhoods and feed them to the goats." And so just in the same way that Robb plays Tywin and Tyrion play the mountain clansmen. "We will ride with you, Lion Lord," but they have an asterisk. They have a condition. The mountain clansmen say they will only ride with the Lannisters and fight their battle if the half-man, Tyrion Lannister, the dwarf, goes with them. And so, oh joy, Tyrion Lannister says with a resigned smile, when he realizes that he's about to get brought along into a battle. His stubby dwarf legs shall propel him into another combat, a mortal battle of life and death, is the new trial, the new tribulation that Tyrion Lannister has found him in. So Tyrion Lannister feels a bit sort of Arthur Dentian at this point. This is the end of the chapter, by the way. Tyrion Lannister feels a bit like Arthur Dent, because Arthur Dent in The Hitchhiker's Guide is a character to whom things happen, right? He just sort of wanders from one misfortune to another. All these just ridiculous, implausible things happen to him, and it's just his job to just sort of try not to die, and hopefully find some meaning in there somewhere. So like Arthur Dent is just walking along the road one day when, oh, the Earth gets demolished, and then he's walking along, and then, oh, he gets ejected out of a spacecraft by some Vogons, and then, oh, he's on this other planet, and this other shit is happening, and there's this game of cricket, and it's very confusing. So Arthur Dent just sort of goes from one ridiculous misfortune to another. Tyrion is kind of vaguely like that in this first book, he's just been walking along down the road, and then he gets dwarf napped by Callum, and he gets dragged up to the crazy fucking Vale, and there's this Maud bloke beating at him with a a comical little truncheon, and there's the sky cell, and then there's the trial, and then he gets out with the Bronn and the thing, and then now his next trial, his next tribulation has begun with this bloody battle that he's being pushed into with the Mountain Clansmen. So Tyrion is just having ridiculous things happen to him, a little bit like Arthur Dent. And yes, a Swift reads Hitchhiker's Guide is definitely a possibility at some point. But that concludes this chapter. That concludes this chapter of Alt Swift X, episode 57 or whatever it was. I hope that you enjoyed. I think that this was an improvement on the last couple of episodes. I think this is a better balance between paying attention to the live streaming and not. I think there is some value in paying attention to it. It is cool to have some kind of a dialogue. It is cool to have a little sort of brain thesaurus. So that's something to continue to some extent. And I think the new system should be to look at the super chats after at the end of the video. So I do want to address everyone who does make a donation like that. So we'll do that now. That'll be the new tradition, to address this stuff at the end. So the Lawn Gnome King has said that. Oh, I'll just quote you. So the Lawn Gnome King says, "Just found out that I got a summer bonus at work. Congratulations, Gnome King, Lawn Gnome King. You must be working industriously in the lawn gnome mines. Do you like command all of the other lawn gnomes? Are they like your minions as the regal king of the lawn gnomes? Do you sort of delegate the sort of gnome tasks in your workplace? Well, whatever you've done, congratulations on the bonus." And thank you for your donation and your enjoyment of the channel. Hashtag Swifty Squad. And then we get Digital Hero again, who on the one hand, I mean, as a character, I feel like Digital Hero is sort of the Hamburglar of the Alt Swift X expanded universe. In the sort of Alt Swift X lore, I feel like Digital Hero is sort of an anti-hero. Because on the one hand, Digital Hero is clearly someone who really loves this channel, and that's great, and we appreciate you, Digital Hero, for your presence. On the other hand, the Spank Me Daddy meme, it's a bit repetitive. I mean, remember what we were saying about the 3-point step, right? About the trend lines, right? If you're gonna do a meme, you gotta go manhood, and then bam, you gotta subvert the expectation. So my advice to Digital Hero is that, if you're gonna do the Spank Me Daddy, maybe go like the repetition, and then spank something else, just a suggestion, just a thought. But thank you very much for your donation, and thank you for being a part of the stream. And I think this is a good place to conclude this episode. So again, there is a Discord, there is a Facebook group, there is a subreddit. Pretty much every platform that exists in the world, there's some kind of Swifty group in it. So if you'd like to be a part of one of those, we will pin some links on the video, no doubt. The wonderful Gnome King might make a comment, or someone else will, which we can pin at the top of the video. But there are all those places. Go join them. Thank you all for watching, and I think with that we'll end the stream. Thank you all, and have a lovely week. Cheers.